The grand hall of the Eternal Throne stretched for nearly 3 kilometers, its crystalline ceiling reaching toward the artificial sky that crowned the palace station of Vethkar Prime. Holographic stars danced overhead, recreating the exact positions of every conquered system in the Dominion's territory, all 412 of them, each one a gem in the crown of Emperor Thalvex the Undying.
Tonight was a celebration. The Feast of Conquest marked the anniversary of the Dominion's greatest victory, the subjugation of the Pyrathi Confederacy, whose 17 billion citizens had been reduced to labor caste status in a war that lasted exactly 42 standard cycles. The Pyrathi had been warriors once, fierce and proud, with ships that could match the Dominion's cruiser-class vessels blow for blow. They had believed themselves unconquerable.
They had been wrong. Emperor Thalvex sat upon the obsidian throne, its surface carved from a single asteroid that had been hollowed out and shaped over 3,000 years. His form was impressive even by the standards of his species. The Vethkar were tall, angular beings with 4 arms and skin that shifted through subtle shades of violet and indigo depending on their emotional state. The Emperor's skin was currently a deep, satisfied purple, the color of contentment and superiority. Surrounding him were the 12 High Admirals of the Dominion fleet, each commanding enough firepower to glass a planet's surface in minutes. Beyond them stood the Council of Spheres, the bureaucratic heart of the empire, managing the taxation, resources, and populations of hundreds of worlds. And filling the hall were thousands of nobles, ambassadors, military officers, and favored servants, all gathered to celebrate the Dominion's invincibility.
Another century of peace through power, High Admiral Kethvas proclaimed, raising a chalice filled with distilled starlight, a delicacy that could only be harvested from the corona of dying stars. May our enemies continue to learn the futility of resistance. The hall echoed with approval, thousands of voices rising in unified celebration.
Emperor Thalvex allowed himself a thin smile. The expression revealed rows of crystalline teeth, a sign of his noble bloodline, dating back to the first Vethkar who had crawled from the mineral pools of their homeworld. He raised one of his 4 hands, and silence fell instantly.
"My faithful subjects," he began, his voice amplified by acoustic crystals embedded in every surface of the hall. "We gather not merely to celebrate the past, but to anticipate the future. The Dominion has grown strong, but we shall grow stronger still. Even now, my fleets patrol the borders of known space, bringing order to chaos, civilization to barbarism, and purpose to the purposeless."
He paused, letting the words sink in. There are those who whisper of species yet unconquered, of territories yet unclaimed. They speak of the outer reaches, where sensors fail and warp lanes twist into impossible configurations. They speak of legends, of ancient powers that once ruled the stars before even the Vethkar achieved sentience. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Such talk was unusual at a celebration. The Emperor was venturing into territory that made even his most loyal subjects uncomfortable. "I tell you now, without hesitation or doubt, there is nothing in this galaxy that can challenge us. There is no power, ancient or modern, that can stand against the might of the Dominion. We have conquered the Pyrathi. We have subjugated the Thornax Collective. We have brought the singing worlds to silence and reshaped the nebular kingdoms into loyal provinces. There is nothing left to fear." The crowd erupted into applause, the momentary tension forgotten. But in the shadows of the hall, watching from behind a pillar of carved moonstone, High Admiral Sevlix felt a chill run through her exoskeletal frame. She was the youngest of the 12 admirals, having earned her position through tactical brilliance rather than political maneuvering. And she knew something that the Emperor apparently did not, or chose not to acknowledge. The long-range sensor network had detected something 3 cycles ago, something that shouldn't exist. At the very edge of Dominion space, in a region called the Hollow Expanse, a zone of gravitational anomalies and dead stars, there had been a reading, just for a moment, a signature unlike anything in the Dominion's databases. It had appeared, existed for exactly 3.7 seconds, and then vanished. The technicians had dismissed it as sensor malfunction. The other admirals had agreed. But Sevlix had studied the data personally, running it through every analytical program at her disposal. The signature was real, and it was massive. Something was out there in the darkness, watching and waiting. And Sevlix had the terrible feeling that the Emperor's boasts might soon be tested in ways the Dominion was not prepared to face. 300 light-years from the gleaming spires of Vethkar Prime, in a region of space that even the most daring explorers avoided, something stirred. The Hollow Expanse had earned its name from the ancient Vethkar astronomers who first charted it, a vast emptiness where stars had died billions of years ago, leaving behind only cold remnants and gravitational ghosts. Navigation was treacherous. Warp lanes twisted and folded in unpredictable ways. Sensors became unreliable, and ships had been known to enter the region and never emerge. The Dominion had marked it as hazardous and left it alone. There was nothing of value there. No habitable worlds, no resources worth the risk of extraction, no strategic advantage. It was simply empty. Or so they believed. Deep within the expanse, hidden behind a curtain of sensor-scattering dust clouds and gravitational lensing effects, a vessel hung motionless in the void. It was unlike anything the Dominion had ever encountered, sleek and angular where their ships were curved, dark where theirs gleamed, and absolutely silent where theirs hummed with energy. The ship measured nearly 12 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull composed of materials that absorbed light rather than reflecting it. Running along its spine was a series of structures that might have been weapon mounts or might have been something else entirely. It was impossible to tell from external observation alone. At the heart of this vessel was a command center unlike any other in the galaxy. Captain Elena Vasquez stood before the main view screen, her hands clasped behind her back in a posture that spoke of decades of military discipline. She was tall for a human, with skin weathered by exposure to radiation and eyes that held the cold calculation of a predator. Gray streaked through her dark hair, a mark of the years she had spent in the depths of space, waiting for this moment. The bridge around her was a symphony of quiet efficiency. 43 crew members worked at their stations, monitoring systems, analyzing data, and preparing for what was to come. They spoke in hushed tones, their voices barely rising above the gentle hum of the ship's reactor core, a reactor that shouldn't exist, powered by principles that the rest of the galaxy had never discovered. "Captain," said Commander James Okonkwo, her executive officer, "long-range sensors have finished their sweep of the Dominion's border installations. I'm uploading the data to Tactical now." Elena nodded, watching as holographic displays materialized in the air before her. They showed the Dominion's defensive network in exquisite detail: patrol routes, station locations, communication frequencies, fleet dispositions. Years of observation had given them everything they needed. "And the feast?" she asked. "Proceeding as anticipated. Every major political and military leader in the Dominion is currently gathered at Vethkar Prime. Their defensive coordination will be at its lowest efficiency for the next 16 hours. Elena allowed herself a small smile. Convenient. Coincidence is a wonderful thing, Commander Okonkwo replied, though they both knew there was nothing coincidental about it. The timing of their emergence had been calculated down to the second, taking into account cultural patterns, travel schedules, and communication lag times. They had been planning this for longer than any of the Dominion's current leadership had been alive. Behind them, the door to the bridge slid open and a third figure entered. Dr. Sarah Chen was small and slight, with the distracted expression of someone whose mind was constantly running calculations beyond the comprehension of ordinary humans. She served as the ship's chief science officer, though science barely began to describe the scope of her expertise. "The cloak is holding stable," she reported, consulting a tablet that displayed streams of data in formats no Dominion computer could parse. "But I'm detecting increased tachyon emissions from the Dominion's border sensors. They've upgraded their detection grid since our last observation." "Can they see us?" Elena asked. "Not yet. Their upgrades improved their range by approximately 17%, but our masking systems are still operating well within safety margins. However, if we move closer than 12 light-years to any major installation, we risk detection." Elena considered this. 12 light-years was nothing in space combat terms. The Dominion's weapons could reach across that distance in seconds. But it was the psychological impact she was after, not the military one, at least not yet. "We won't need to get closer," she said, "not for Phase 1. Dr. Chen nodded, apparently satisfied. She turned to return to her lab, then paused. "Captain, I've been reviewing the cultural analyses. Are you certain about the approach? The Dominion's entire identity is built on their belief in their own invincibility. When we reveal ourselves, we won't just be challenging their military, we'll be challenging their fundamental understanding of reality." "That's precisely the point, Doctor." "I understand. I just want to make sure we're prepared for the consequences. A cornered predator is dangerous, but a predator whose entire worldview is collapsing may be unpredictable in ways we haven't anticipated." Elena turned to face her fully. "We've anticipated everything we can anticipate. The rest will require adaptation. It's what humans do best." Dr. Chen smiled slightly at that. "Indeed it is, Captain. Indeed it is." She left, and Elena turned back to the view screen. Beyond the dust clouds that concealed them, beyond the treacherous gravitational anomalies of the hollow expanse, the Dominion stretched across 412 star systems, a civilization that had never known defeat, never questioned its own supremacy, never imagined that something might be lurking in the darkness, watching, learning, and preparing. They were about to receive an education. On the industrial world of Karth 7, in the sprawling manufactories that produced weapons for the Dominion fleet, a Pyrathi worker named Jex pressed his face against the transparent barrier of his dormitory and stared at the stars. He was old by Pyrathi standards, nearly 200 standard years, with scales that had faded from vibrant crimson to a dull ochre. His 4 arms ached constantly from decades of labor, and his eyes had dimmed from staring at assembly lines under harsh artificial light. But his mind remained sharp, and his memories were as vivid as ever. He remembered the war. He remembered when the Pyrathi had been free, when their ships had sailed between 17 star systems, and their culture had flourished across countless worlds. He remembered the songs they had sung, war hymns that had echoed through the corridors of their dreadnoughts as they prepared for battle. And he remembered the defeat. The Dominion had come with overwhelming force, their fleets blocking out the stars. The Pyrathi had fought, oh how they had fought, but it had not been enough. For every Dominion ship destroyed, 10 more had emerged from warp. For every world successfully defended, 3 more had fallen. The war had lasted 42 cycles, and by the end, the Pyrathi had been reduced to a broken remnant of their former glory.
Now they served.
Jex worked 14 hours a day, 6 days a week, assembling the very weapons that had destroyed his people. He slept in cramped dormitories with 100 other workers, ate nutrient paste that provided sustenance but no pleasure, and watched as generation after generation of Pyrathi children grew up knowing nothing of their heritage except what could be whispered in the darkness after the lights went out. But still they remembered, and still they hoped. Legends spoke of others, species that had escaped the Dominion's grasp, civilizations that dwelt in the spaces between stars where even the Vethkar feared to tread. The elders told stories of a prophecy, ancient even before the war, that spoke of a day when the Dominion would face a foe it could not defeat, when the conquered would rise and reclaim their birthright. Jex had stopped believing in such stories long ago. He had seen too much, lost too much, to maintain faith in myths and legends. But tonight, as he stared at the stars, something felt different. He couldn't explain it. It wasn't anything he could point to or quantify. Just a feeling, deep in his ancient bones, that change was coming, that the universe was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. A younger Pyrathi approached him, Sela, barely 60 years old, still bearing the vibrant scales of youth. She was one of the few who still practiced the old ways, who still knew the war hymns and the histories that the Dominion tried so hard to erase. "Elder," she said quietly, keeping her voice low so the surveillance systems wouldn't flag it, "you look troubled." Jex shook his head slowly. Not troubled, expectant. Expectant of what? He was silent for a long moment, his ancient eyes fixed on a particular patch of sky, the direction of the hollow expanse, though he had no way of knowing that. "I don't know," he finally said, "but something is coming, child. Something the Dominion has never faced. I can feel it in my scales." Sela looked out at the stars, trying to see whatever the elder was seeing. But to her eyes, the sky looked exactly as it always had, vast, cold, and dominated by the patrol ships of their conquerors. "The old stories speak of a reckoning," she said carefully. "A day when the oppressors will face their own destruction." "Stories," Jex sighed. "Just stories." But even as he said it, he felt the feeling intensify. Somewhere out there, beyond the edge of everything he knew, something was awakening. And when it arrived, the galaxy would never be the same. High Admiral Sevlix could not sleep. She lay in her private quarters aboard the command dreadnought Inevitable Victory, staring at the ceiling and running through the sensor data in her mind for the 1,000th time. The celebration had ended hours ago, the Emperor retiring to his personal chambers and the other admirals returning to their flagships. But Sevlix had found no peace. The signature haunted her. She had studied every sensor malfunction in the Dominion's records, every ghost reading and false alarm that had ever been documented. None of them matched what they had detected in the hollow expanse. Sensor malfunctions followed predictable patterns: power fluctuations, particle interference, gravitational distortions. They could be analyzed, explained, categorized. But this signature had been different. It had appeared fully formed, remained stable for exactly 3.7 seconds, and then vanished without any of the trailing artifacts that accompanied normal sensor errors. It was as if something had deliberately revealed itself for just long enough to be noticed, then concealed itself again. Which was, of course, impossible. The Dominion possessed the most advanced cloaking detection technology in the known galaxy. Their sensor networks could pierce conventional stealth fields from light-years away. No species they had ever encountered possessed the capability to hide from them. Not the Pyrethy, not the Thornax, not even the theoretical threats that military planners invented for wargame scenarios. And yet, Sevlix rose from her sleeping platform and moved to her private terminal. She called up the sensor data again, studying the signature's characteristics for perhaps the 100th time. Energy output, unknown. Readings fluctuated beyond measurable parameters. Dimensional profile, consistent with a vessel approximately 12 kilometers in length. If the readings were accurate, and every diagnostic she had run suggested they were, then something was out there in the hollow expanse, something enormous, something that could hide from Dominion sensors at will, something that had chosen to reveal itself, if only for a moment. Why? The question tormented her. Military logic suggested reconnaissance. The vessel had been gathering information and had made a brief error, exposing itself to detection. But if that were true, why had there been no follow-up? The Dominion should have detected further signatures, seen more glimpses of whatever was watching them. Unless it had learned from its mistake and improved its concealment. Or unless it had done it deliberately, knowing it would be dismissed as a sensor malfunction. The thought chilled her. She pulled up a star chart, focusing on the hollow expanse. The region was vast, over 1,000 cubic light-years of dead space, sensor shadows, and gravitational anomalies. Searching it would require hundreds of ships and years of effort, and even then, success would not be guaranteed. If whatever was hiding there could conceal itself from their sensors, it could evade any search party they sent. Sevlix made a decision. She would not take this to the other admirals. They had already dismissed the reading, and raising it again would only damage her credibility. But she would take it to someone who might listen. Someone who understood that the universe was vast and full of dangers that the Dominion had never imagined. She opened a secure communication channel, routing it through her personal encryption protocols. The face that appeared on her screen belonged to High Inquisitor Vethmos, the leader of the Dominion's intelligence division, a figure feared throughout the Empire for his ruthless efficiency and unwavering paranoia. "High Admiral," Vethmos said, his violet skin shifting to a suspicious shade of gray. "This is an unusual hour for a social call." "This isn't a social call, High Inquisitor. I need to discuss a security matter, off the official record." Vethmos's eyes narrowed. "Intriguing. Continue." Sevlix transmitted the sensor data, watching the Inquisitor's expression as he reviewed it. For a long moment he said nothing. Then his skin shifted to a color she had never seen before, a pale, almost translucent shade that, she realized with a start, was fear. "Where did you obtain this?" he demanded. "Long-range sensors in the 7th border sector, 3 cycles ago." "And you're only bringing it to me now?" The other admirals dismissed it as sensor malfunction. I wanted to be certain before I raised concerns. Vethmos was silent for another long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. "You were right to bring this to me, Admiral, and you were right to be concerned." "You've seen something like this before?" "Once. Many years ago, before I held my current position, a similar signature was detected at the very edge of Dominion space, in a region we had not yet explored. It appeared, existed for a few seconds, and vanished." "What happened?" Vethmos's expression darkened. "We sent a reconnaissance fleet to investigate. 12 ships, including a command carrier. They entered the region and were never heard from again. Sevlix felt her blood run cold. A fleet of that size? Lost without a trace? The official record states they were destroyed by a gravitational anomaly. The true record, known only to myself and 2 others, is that we received one final transmission before they disappeared. A single word, repeated over and over. What word? Vethmos met her eyes through the screen, and she saw genuine terror in his gaze, an emotion she had never imagined the fearsome Inquisitor capable of feeling. Humans. The word hung in the air between them like a poison. Humans? Sevlix repeated, unfamiliar with the term. Is that a species? That is what we sought to determine, Vethmos replied. After the loss of the reconnaissance fleet, we initiated a comprehensive search of all databases, historical records, archaeological findings, intercepted communications from uncontacted civilizations. We found fragments. Fragments of what? Of a legend. A myth that appears in the oldest stories of a dozen different species, some of them predating even the Vethkar's rise to sentience. They speak of beings that came from a world of water and stone, at the edge of a spiral arm in a region of the galaxy we have never explored. They are described differently in different accounts, sometimes as liberators, sometimes as destroyers, sometimes as gods who walked among mortals. Sevlix leaned forward. And you believe these legends describe a real species? I believe nothing. But I cannot ignore the correlations. The myths speak of vessels that could vanish from sight, of weapons that could unmake matter at the fundamental level, of warriors who fought with a ferocity that defied reason. And in every account, they bear the same name, or a variant of it filtered through different languages and translation matrices. Humans. Yes. Sevlix considered this. If such a species existed, if they possessed the technology these legends describe, why have we never encountered them? The Dominion has explored more of the galaxy than any civilization in recorded history. We should have found evidence of their existence. Perhaps we have been looking in the wrong places. Or perhaps, Vethmos paused, as if reluctant to voice the thought. Perhaps they have not wished to be found. The implication was staggering. A species advanced enough to hide from the Dominion's sensors, patient enough to remain concealed for centuries or millennia, watching and waiting in the darkness. What do you recommend? Sevlix asked. For now, nothing. We cannot afford to alarm the Emperor or the Council with unsubstantiated theories. But I will begin my own investigation, quietly. If there is something out there, if these humans are real and they have returned to our region of space, we must learn everything we can before they make their presence known. And if they're already preparing to make their presence known? If that sensor reading was a deliberate revelation? Vethmos's expression hardened. Then we must hope that the legends exaggerate their capabilities. Because if they do not, then we may be facing the greatest threat the Dominion has ever encountered. The communication ended, leaving Sevlix alone with her thoughts. She stared at the star chart still displayed on her screen, at the void of the hollow expanse where something ancient and powerful might be stirring. For the first time in her career, she felt something she had never experienced before. Doubt. Aboard the UNS Prometheus, for that was the name of the vessel hidden in the hollow expanse, preparations for the next phase were proceeding with mechanical precision. Captain Elena Vasquez walked through the ship's corridors, observing the activity with a commander's eye. Crew members moved with purpose, checking systems, calibrating weapons, and running simulations for every conceivable scenario. They had trained for this moment their entire lives, in some cases, literally. The Prometheus had been traveling through the depths of space for over 300 years, and many of its crew had been born and raised aboard, knowing no other home and no other purpose. They were the inheritors of a mission that had begun long before any of them drew breath. A mission that stretched back to a time when humanity had been young, fragile, and desperate to survive. Elena paused at a viewport, gazing out at the swirling dust clouds that concealed them. Beyond this temporary shelter lay a galaxy that had forgotten humanity existed, or had never known in the first place. The Dominion and its conquered species had no idea that, tens of thousands of years ago, humans had looked up at these same stars and dreamed of reaching them. They had reached them, and they had found that the universe was not welcoming. Humanity's first encounters with alien civilizations had been educational. They had learned that the galaxy was dominated by empires built on conquest and subjugation, that peaceful contact was the exception rather than the rule, that a species that revealed weakness would be enslaved or exterminated. They had learned to hide, to observe, to develop capabilities that would ensure their survival no matter what threats they encountered. The Prometheus was the culmination of those efforts. A ship designed not for exploration or diplomacy, but for war on a scale that the Dominion could not imagine. Its hull was sheathed in adaptive metamaterials that could mimic any background radiation pattern, rendering it invisible to conventional sensors. Its weapon systems were based on physics that the Dominion had not discovered, drawing power from sources that should not exist in normal space. And its crew was composed of individuals who had been selected, trained, and enhanced for a single purpose: to be the vanguard of humanity's emergence onto the galactic stage. But they were not here to conquer. Not exactly. Elena's orders that had been passed down through generations of captains, were specific. Humanity would not become what it opposed. They would not build an empire on the bones of the vanquished. But neither would they stand by while other species suffered under tyranny. The Dominion had enslaved hundreds of billions of sentient beings. They had exterminated cultures that refused to submit. They had built their civilization on a foundation of blood and terror, and they believed, truly believed, that they had the right to do so. That belief was about to be challenged. "Captain," Commander Okonkwo's voice came through her comm implant. "Phase 1 is ready to initiate on your command." Elena took a deep breath. "Understood. Assemble the command staff in the war room. We begin in 1 hour." She took one last look at the stars beyond the viewport. Somewhere out there, an empire that had never known defeat was celebrating its invincibility. In 1 hour, they would learn how wrong they were. The war room of the Prometheus was a circular chamber deep within the ship's armored core, surrounded by holographic displays that could simulate any tactical scenario. When Elena entered, her senior officers were already assembled: Commander Okonkwo, Dr. Chen, Chief Tactical Officer Marcus Webb, Chief Engineer Yuki Tanaka, and a dozen others representing every critical department. They rose as she entered, a gesture of respect that she acknowledged with a nod before taking her seat at the head of the table. "Status report," she ordered. Commander Okonkwo spoke first. "All systems are at full operational capacity. Weapons, propulsion, life support, communications, everything is green. The crew is at battle stations and morale is high." "Navigation?" Lieutenant Commander Aisha Patel, the ship's chief navigator, responded. "We have plotted optimal approach vectors to 12 key locations within Dominion space. The first target is the 7th border sector, specifically the garrison station at Threshold Point. It's their primary early warning installation for this region." "Tactical assessment?" Chief Tactical Officer Webb pulled up a holographic display showing the station and its defenses. Threshold Point is defended by a standard border garrison, 1 command station, 4 patrol cruisers, approximately 2,000 personnel. Their sensor grid covers a radius of 15 light-years, and they maintain continuous communication with the primary fleet base at Korath Anchorage. Elena studied the display. And their response time? If we are detected and they transmit an alert, reinforcements from Korath Anchorage can arrive in approximately 4 hours. However, if we disable their communications before they can transmit, we can operate freely for significantly longer. We won't be disabling their communications, Elena said. We want them to transmit. The room fell silent. Even Okonkwo, who had served with Elena for decades, looked surprised. Captain? Elena stood, moving to the central holographic display. This is not a military operation in the conventional sense. We are not here to destroy installations or kill enemy personnel. We are here to send a message, one that will reach every corner of the Dominion and shake the foundations of their civilization. She manipulated the display, calling up a recording that had been prepared years ago. It showed her own face, calm and composed, speaking words that had been crafted to achieve maximum psychological impact. Citizens of the Galactic Dominion, the recording began. I am Captain Elena Vasquez of the United Earth Naval Ship Prometheus. I am speaking to you now to inform you that your galaxy is no longer alone. Humanity has been watching you for a very long time. Watching, learning, and waiting. We have seen your conquests. We have witnessed your atrocities. We have documented the suffering of the species you have enslaved and the cultures you have destroyed. And we have judged you. The recording paused, and Elena looked around the room. Every face was fixed on her, waiting. The message continues for approximately 10 minutes, she explained. It provides a detailed summary of the Dominion's crimes, along with evidence gathered from centuries of observation. It concludes with an ultimatum: free the subjugated species, dismantle the military apparatus, and submit to a process of reconciliation, or face consequences beyond their comprehension. And if they refuse? Dr. Chen asked, though she already knew the answer. They will refuse. Their entire identity is built on superiority and conquest. They cannot accept such terms without abandoning everything they believe about themselves. But that's not the point. The point is to offer them the choice, to make it clear that what comes next is a result of their own decisions, not our unprovoked aggression. Chief Engineer Tanaka spoke up. Captain, I understand the ethical reasoning, but practically speaking, how do we deliver this message in a way that ensures it's taken seriously? If we simply broadcast it, they'll dismiss it as a hoax or a psychological operation by one of their enemies. Elena smiled. That's where Phase 1 comes in. We're not just going to broadcast the message, we're going to demonstrate that we have the capability to back it up. She called up another display, this one showing the Threshold Point garrison and the surrounding space. In approximately 1 hour, we are going to decloak directly in front of the Threshold Point station. We will remain visible for exactly 30 seconds, long enough for them to get a clear sensor reading, long enough for them to see what we are, but not long enough for them to mount any kind of response. Then we will transmit the message and disappear. And they'll transmit the sensor data along with our message, Okonkwo said, understanding dawning on his face. Their own confirmation that we're real will accompany our ultimatum. Precisely. We're not asking them to take our word for anything. We're showing them that we exist, that we can appear and disappear at will, and that we have been watching them without their knowledge.
By the time they finish analyzing the data, they'll understand that everything we've said is true, and that they have no idea what else we're capable of." The room was silent as the officers absorbed this. It was an audacious plan, a psychological warfare operation on a civilization-wide scale. But if it worked, it would destabilize the Dominion more effectively than any military campaign. "One more thing," Elena added. "Our appearance at Threshold Point will not be our only revelation. Simultaneously, Dr. Chen will be transmitting the message to every enslaved population in the Dominion, every Pyrothi manufactorum, every Thornax mining colony, every world where subjugated species labor under Dominion rule." Dr. Chen nodded. "We've identified 17,000 targets for simultaneous broadcast. The message they receive will be slightly different. It will include a promise that their liberation is coming, and that they should prepare themselves for the opportunity to reclaim their freedom." "You're trying to ignite rebellions," Webb said. "We're trying to give hope to those who have none," Elena corrected. "What they do with that hope is up to them. But if the Dominion suddenly finds itself facing internal unrest on 1,000 worlds while also confronting an unknown external threat, their attention will be divided, their resources will be stretched, and their confidence will be shattered." She looked around the room one final time. "Any questions?" There were none. Every officer present understood what was at stake, and every one of them had spent their entire life preparing for this moment. "Then let's begin." Lieutenant Commander Vethros was bored. As the ranking officer on night watch at Threshold Point, he had exactly one responsibility: monitor the sensors and report anything unusual. In the 14 years he had held this posting, he had never reported anything unusual. The hollow expanse was empty. Everyone knew that. The sensor grid was maintained more out of bureaucratic inertia than any expectation of detecting threats. He sat in his command chair, reviewing requisition reports and counting the days until his transfer to a more prestigious assignment. Around him, his skeleton crew went about their duties with the lethargy of personnel who knew their work was meaningless. Then, everything changed. "Commander! Sensor Technician Kethlos!" shouted, his voice cracking with disbelief. I'm reading a massive energy signature! It just appeared out of nowhere!" Vethros snapped upright. "What? Where?" "Directly ahead, bearing 037 Mark 12, range 200 kilometers." 200 kilometers. That was practically touching distance in space terms. How had anything gotten so close without being detected? "On screen," Vethros ordered. The main display shifted, and Vethros felt his blood freeze in his veins. It was a ship. At least, he assumed it was a ship. It was shaped like nothing he had ever seen, a massive, angular shadow against the stars. 12 kilometers long, according to the sensor readouts that were now scrolling across his display. Its hull was darker than the void itself, seeming to drink in light rather than reflect it. And it was simply there, motionless, watching. "Where did it come from?" Vethros demanded, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know, sir. One moment, the sensors showed empty space, and the next, this." "What are our scans showing?" Kethlos's hands trembled as he worked his console. Mass, approximately 2.3 billion metric tons. Energy readings are... I've never seen anything like this, Commander. Whatever power source they're using, it's not in our databases. And there's something else. "What?" "We're being scanned. Their sensors are sweeping us, and there's nothing we can do to block them. They're seeing everything. Our systems, our weapons, our personnel counts, everything." Vethros forced himself to think.
This was a situation that no training had prepared him for. The sudden appearance of an unknown vessel, more advanced than anything in Dominion records, appearing out of nowhere at the very doorstep of their station. "Get me a communication link," he ordered, "and prepare to transmit an emergency alert to Korath Anchorage." "Working on communications now, sir. But, Commander, we're receiving an incoming transmission."
From the vessel?
"Yes, sir."
Vethros swallowed hard. "Put it through."
The screen shifted again, and Vethros found himself looking at an alien face, unlike any species in the Dominion's databases. The being appeared to have only 2 arms, with skin in an unusual pinkish tan shade and dark hair framing features that were almost, but not quite, symmetrical. Its eyes were intense, focused, and completely devoid of fear. "Citizens of the Galactic Dominion," the alien said, its voice translated into flawless Vethkar standard. "I am Captain Elena Vasquez of the United Earth naval ship Prometheus. I am speaking to you now to inform you that your galaxy is no longer alone." For the next 10 minutes, Vethros and his crew sat in stunned silence as the message played out. It detailed crimes, real crimes, atrocities that Vethros had heard whispered about but never confirmed. It named species, planets, dates, casualties. It demonstrated knowledge that should have been impossible for any outsider to possess. And it concluded with an ultimatum that made Vethros's skin shift to a shade of terrified white. When the message ended, the vessel remained on screen for exactly 5 more seconds. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, it vanished, the sensors showing empty space once again, as if the massive ship had never existed. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Keflas broke the silence. "Commander, the message. It was transmitted from here on every frequency simultaneously. Every station in the sector would have received it. Every ship. Every communication relay." Vethros nodded slowly, his mind still reeling. "Get me a direct line to Korath Anchorage, priority 1, and save every byte of sensor data from the past hour." "Yes, sir. Commander, what was that?" Vethros shook his head. He didn't know, but he had the terrible feeling that the Dominion was about to find out. The throne room of Vethkar Prime had never known such chaos. Emperor Thalvex stood before the obsidian throne, his skin cycling through colors so rapidly that it was impossible to track his emotional state. Around him, advisors, admirals, and counselors shouted over one another, their voices creating a cacophony of fear, denial, and rage. "It is impossible!" High Admiral Kethvas bellowed, his voice cutting through the noise. "No species can appear and disappear at will. No vessel can exist undetected at our borders. This is clearly a fabrication, an elaborate hoax designed to destabilize the Dominion." "A hoax?" High Admiral Sevlix countered, stepping forward with a datapad in her lower hands. "With respect, Admiral, I have reviewed the sensor data from Threshold Point personally. The readings are consistent across every instrument. The vessel was real. Its technology is real. And so, I fear, is the threat it represents." "You would have us cower before ghosts and legends?" "I would have us acknowledge reality before it destroys us." "Silence!" The Emperor's voice rang through the chamber, and instantly every other sound ceased. Thalvex's skin had settled on a deep, furious crimson, the color of barely contained rage. "I have ruled this dominion for 300 years, he said, his voice deceptively calm. In that time, I have faced rebellions, invasions, and assassination attempts beyond counting. I have seen species rise against us with weapons they believed would end our supremacy, and I have watched them fall. I have heard claims of ancient powers, legendary civilizations, and mythical threats since I first took the throne. And I tell you now, none of them have ever proven to be more than the desperate fantasies of our enemies. He stepped down from the dais, moving among his advisors with the predatory grace of a creature accustomed to absolute power. However, he continued, I am not a fool. Something appeared at our border. Something transmitted a message designed to undermine our authority and incite rebellion among the subjugated races. Whether it is truly what it claims to be, these humans from beyond known space, or merely a clever deception by a known enemy, we must respond. He turned to face High Admiral Kethphos. You will take the Grand Fleet to the Hollow Expanse. You will conduct a comprehensive search of the entire region. You will find whatever is hiding there and destroy it. Kethphos saluted, his skin glowing with eager aggression. It will be done, Your Eminence. And if nothing is found? Sevlix's quiet question cut through the moment of triumph like a blade. The Emperor turned to face her, his expression cold. Explain yourself, Admiral. The vessel appeared and vanished within 30 seconds. Our sensors could not track it before or after its appearance. If it possesses the capability to evade detection completely, searching the hollow expanse will accomplish nothing except demonstrating our inability to find it. You suggest we do nothing? I suggest we prepare for the possibility that we are facing something genuinely new, something our current strategies and technologies may not be equipped to handle. The message they transmitted mentioned centuries of observation. If they have been watching us that long, they know our capabilities, our tactics, our weaknesses. We know nothing of theirs. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. You speak as if you believe their claims. I speak as a military officer whose duty is to prepare for every contingency. If these humans are real, if they possess even a fraction of the capabilities their appearance suggests, then sending the Grand Fleet to search for them may be playing directly into their hands. And what would you have me do instead? Sevlix hesitated. She was walking a dangerous line, questioning the Emperor's decisions in front of the entire court. But she had sworn an oath to protect the Dominion, and sometimes that meant speaking uncomfortable truths. Consolidate our forces. Increase surveillance of the subjugated populations. Their message was designed to incite rebellion, and we cannot fight an external threat if we are also facing internal upheaval. Study the sensor data to learn everything we can about their technology, and prepare contingency plans for scenarios where conventional military approaches may not be sufficient. The Emperor stared at her for a long moment. Then, to the surprise of everyone present, he nodded slowly. Your counsel is not without merit, Admiral. Very well. The Grand Fleet will proceed to the Hollow Expanse as planned. We cannot be seen to cower in the face of threats, regardless of their nature. But you will remain here with a defensive force, prepared to respond to any internal disturbances. And the High Inquisitor will intensify his monitoring of the subjugated populations. He turned back to the obsidian throne, ascending the steps with deliberate majesty. I do not know what these humans are, or what they truly want, but I know this. No matter how advanced they may be, no matter how long they have been watching, they are challenging the Dominion. and the Dominion has never lost a war. He settled onto the throne, his eyes blazing with ancient power. We will not lose this one. Across the Dominion, the message was spreading. In the manufactories of Karth 7, Pyrathi workers gathered in secret as the broadcast repeated on contraband communication devices. Jex, the ancient elder who had sensed something stirring in the darkness, listened with tears streaming down his faded scales. "Liberation is coming," the human voice said. "Prepare yourselves. When the opportunity arises, seize it. Your suffering has been witnessed, your courage has been seen, and your freedom is within reach." For the first time in nearly 2 centuries, Jex felt something he had thought lost forever: hope. In the mining colonies of the Thornax Collective, massive silicon-based beings paused in their endless excavations as the message echoed through the tunnels. They were creatures of stone and mineral, slow to change and slower to act, but they had long memories. They remembered what it was like to be free, to shape their own destinies, to build rather than merely extract resources for their conquerors. The message asked nothing of them. It made no demands, required no immediate action. It simply informed them that they were not forgotten, that someone out there knew of their plight and was preparing to act. It was enough. Deep in the hearts of beings who had seemed broken beyond repair, something began to stir. A spark that could, given time and opportunity, become a roaring flame. In the agricultural worlds of the former nebular kingdoms, genetically modified slave races looked up from their endless labor to watch the skies. They had been engineered by the Dominion to be compliant, their capacity for aggression and rebellion suppressed by generations of selective breeding. But even engineered compliance had its limits. The message spoke of crimes against their ancestors, of cultures erased and peoples transformed into tools. It reminded them of what had been stolen, and it promised that restoration was possible. For the first time in generations, some of them began to question why they obeyed. And in the Dominion's core worlds, among the Vethkar themselves, the message created chaos of a different kind. The average Vethkar citizen had been raised on stories of their species' invincibility, of wars won, enemies crushed, and civilizations brought to heel. They had never questioned their right to rule the galaxy, never imagined that something might exist beyond their censors that could challenge their supremacy. Now, suddenly, that certainty was shaken. Debate raged in public forums and private gatherings. Some dismissed the message as a hoax, an elaborate deception that would soon be exposed. Others argued that even if the humans were real, the Dominion's military might would prove overwhelming. And a small but growing minority began to ask dangerous questions. Questions about the morality of their conquests, the justice of their empire, the possibility that they might not be as superior as they had always believed. For a civilization built on absolute confidence in its own supremacy, doubt was a poison more dangerous than any weapon. High Inquisitor Vethmos watched the social chaos unfold through his network of informants and surveillance systems, and he felt the cold certainty of approaching catastrophe. The humans, whoever or whatever they were, had struck at the heart of the Dominion without firing a single shot. They had weaponized information, turned the Dominion's own conquered populations into potential insurgents, and planted seeds of doubt among the master race itself. It was, he had to admit, brilliant. And it was only the beginning. The Grand Fleet of the Galactic Dominion was the most powerful military force in known space. 1,200 vessels, ranging from nimble frigates to massive dreadnoughts, represented the culmination of 3,000 years of Vethkar engineering and tactical development.
At its heart was the Eternal Fury, High Admiral Kethvos's flagship, a super-dreadnought nearly 10 kilometers long, bristling with weapons capable of shattering moons. As the fleet entered the hollow expanse, Kethvos stood on the command deck of the Eternal Fury and surveyed the emptiness before him. The region was as inhospitable as the charts had suggested. Gravitational anomalies pulled at the ship's drives, sensor readings flickered with interference, and navigation required constant adjustment to avoid being pulled into dead-end warplanes. But Kethvos was not concerned. He had 1,200 ships, millions of crew members, and the full might of the Dominion behind him. Whatever was hiding in this forsaken region would be found and destroyed. He would accept nothing less. "Deploy the sensor drones," he ordered. "Full saturation pattern. I want every cubic light-year of this expanse mapped within the next 30 cycles." His operations officer, Sub-Admiral Thexlos, acknowledged the command with a gesture. Within moments, thousands of automated drones were launching from the fleet's carrier vessels, spreading out in an expanding sphere to extend the fleet's sensor range. "Sir," Thexlos reported after the deployment was complete, "initial drone returns are coming in. No sign of any vessel matching the threshold point description. However, we are detecting some unusual energy patterns approximately 40 light-years from our current position." "Define unusual." "I'm not certain, sir. The readings don't match any known phenomenon. It could be a natural anomaly, or it could be our quarry." Kethvos made his decision instantly. "Set course for the energy patterns. All ships maintain battle formation. If these humans are out there, I want them to see exactly what they're facing." The Grand Fleet began to move, 1,200 vessels of war sliding through the darkness toward whatever awaited them. Kethvos felt a grim satisfaction at the sight. Let the humans watch, if they were watching. Let them see the power arrayed against them. Let them understand that their games of appearing and vanishing would not save them from the wrath of the Dominion. But as the hours passed and the fleet drew closer to the energy readings, something unexpected began to happen. Ships started to disappear. Not in battle. There was no enemy to fight, no weapons being fired. They simply vanished from the fleet's network, their transponder signals cutting out without warning or explanation. "Report!" Kethvos demanded as the third ship disappeared. "What's happening out there?" "Unknown, sir," Thexlos responded, his voice tight with confusion and fear. "The vessels, they're just gone. No debris, no energy signatures, no distress signals. It's as if they never existed." "That's impossible. Ships don't simply cease to exist." "I know, sir. But wait, we're receiving a transmission from the Vigilant Blade. They were the third ship to disappear." "Put it through." The communication screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of the Vigilant Blade. But something was wrong. The image was distorted, as if viewed through warped glass, and the crew members visible in the frame were frozen in postures of shock and terror. Then, as Kethvos watched, a figure stepped into the frame, a human. "High Admiral Kethvos," the human said, his voice calm and conversational. "I am Lieutenant Commander Marcus Webb, Tactical Officer of the Prometheus. I'm transmitting from the bridge of your vessel Vigilant Blade, which we intercepted approximately 7 minutes ago." "Intercepted? Impossible! Our sensors showed no—" "Your sensors showed what we allowed them to show. The Vigilant Blade is intact, and its crew is unharmed, merely immobilized for the duration of this conversation. They will be released once we've concluded our business."
Kethvos felt his skin shifting through colors of rage and disbelief. "You dare!"
"I dare because I can, Admiral. This demonstration is intended to illustrate a point. We have been observing your fleet since it entered the hollow expanse. We have detected every sensor drone you deployed. We have tracked every ship in your formation, and we have, at will, removed 3 of your vessels from your network without your sensors registering anything unusual."
"Where are my ships?" "Safe, as I said, unharmed. We have no desire for unnecessary casualties. What we desire is for you to understand the reality of your situation." The image shifted, showing a view of space from the Vigilant Blade's external cameras. Kethvos's blood ran cold. The Prometheus hung motionless in the void, its massive form dwarfing the captured Dominion vessel. Around it, 2 other ships from the Grand Fleet, the Relentless Pursuit and the Conquering Glory, floated in similar states of apparent immobility.
"You entered this region with 1,200 vessels," Webb continued. "You believed that your numerical superiority would guarantee victory. You were mistaken. We could disable your entire fleet ship by ship without ever engaging in direct combat. We could destroy you without losing a single life. But that is not our purpose."
"Then what is your purpose?" "To give you a choice. You may withdraw your fleet from the hollow expanse, return to Dominion space, and report honestly to your Emperor about what you have witnessed. Or you may continue your pursuit, in which case we will be forced to demonstrate capabilities that you will find unpleasant." "You think threats will intimidate the Grand Fleet?"
"I think facts will inform the Grand Fleet. Here is a fact. We have been observing your civilization for over 300 of your standard years. We know every weapon system you possess, every tactical doctrine you employ, every weakness in your fleet's coordination protocols. Here is another fact. We possess technologies that exist in theoretical research papers that your scientists dismissed as impossible. And here is a final fact. We have no interest in destroying you."
"We are here to offer an alternative to the endless cycle of conquest and subjugation that has defined your history." Webb paused, his expression hardening. "The choice is yours, Admiral. Withdraw now with your ships and crew intact and consider what you have learned. Or continue and discover just how outmatched you truly are."
The transmission ended, and the 3 captured ships suddenly reappeared on the Grand Fleet sensors, their crews unfrozen and their systems fully operational. They reported the same impossible story. One moment they had been sailing in formation, the next they were aboard the Prometheus, frozen in place while humans walked among them, and then they were back, as if nothing had happened.
Kethvos stood on his command deck, staring at the empty space where the Prometheus had appeared and vanished. His skin had settled on a shade he had never worn before, a pale, ashen color that spoke of an emotion foreign to his experience. Fear. "Admiral?" the Thexlos asked quietly. "What are your orders?"
Kethvos was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, he straightened, forcing his skin to return to the confident purple of command.
"Continue the search," he ordered, "and prepare the fleet for combat." He would not retreat. He could not retreat. The honor of the Dominion, his own honor, demanded that he find and destroy this enemy, no matter the cost. It was a decision that would prove to be catastrophic. For the next 16 hours, the Grand Fleet pressed deeper into the hollow expanse, searching for their elusive quarry. They found nothing. No sensor readings, no energy signatures, no trace of the massive vessel that had appeared and vanished before their eyes. Then the attacks began. Not attacks in the traditional sense. There were no weapons fired, no ships destroyed. But one by one, vessels throughout the fleet began to experience malfunctions. Weapon systems went offline. Navigation computers reported impossible coordinates. Communications arrays filled with static, then cleared to reveal strange messages, recordings of Dominion atrocities, testimonies from survivors of conquered species, documentation of crimes that the fleet's crews had never imagined. Morale crumbled. Crew members who had spent their entire lives believing in the righteousness of the Dominion were confronted with evidence of its brutality. Officers who had participated in subjugation campaigns found themselves watching recordings of the suffering they had caused. The humans were not attacking the fleet's ships, they were attacking its certainty, its sense of purpose, its conviction that it was fighting for a just cause. "It's psychological warfare," Thraxlos reported grimly. "They're trying to break our will without firing a shot." "Then we will show them that our will cannot be broken," Kethvos replied, though even he could hear the uncertainty in his own voice. "Resume formation. We continue the search." But as the hours passed, the situation only worsened. Ships that had been stalwarts of the fleet began reporting that their crews were refusing orders. Officers were questioning the purpose of the mission. And everywhere, the same question was being asked. What if the humans are right? What if we are the villains? Finally, after 72 hours of fruitless searching and psychological erosion, Kethvos made a decision that would define his legacy. "All ships," he transmitted, his voice carrying across the fleet network. "This is High Admiral Kethvos. We are being tested. Not merely by these humans, but by our own strength of will. They believe they can break us with words, with recordings, with tricks designed to make us question ourselves. They believe that we are weak, that our convictions are shallow, that we will crumble in the face of their propaganda." He paused, letting his words sink in. "They are wrong. We are the Dominion. We have conquered 100 species. We have ruled this galaxy for 3,000 years. And we will not be defeated by an enemy too cowardly to face us in open battle. All ships converge on my position. We will form a single formation, weapons locked and ready, and we will advance to the center of the hollow expanse. If these humans want to demonstrate their superiority, let them try to do so against the full, concentrated might of the Grand Fleet." It was a bold strategy, and a desperate one. By concentrating the fleet in a single formation, Kethvos was sacrificing flexibility and sensor coverage in favor of raw firepower. He was gambling that the humans would not be able to disable 1,200 ships simultaneously, that their tricks and misdirections would fail against overwhelming force. He was wrong. As the Grand Fleet formed up and began its advance, the Prometheus decloaked directly in their path. This time, there was no brief appearance and vanishing. The massive vessel simply materialized, as if it had been there all along, and held position. It made no threatening moves, deployed no weapons, transmitted no messages. It simply waited. "All ships, hold position," Kethvos ordered, his heart's pounding. "Weapons lock on target." 1,200 vessels trained their armaments on the Prometheus. Thousands of weapons, representing enough firepower to shatter planets, pointed at a single target. "Admiral," Thexlos said quietly, "even if we destroy them, our sensors suggest they may not be alone. We detected their signature for less than 4 seconds at threshold point. They could have dozens of ships hiding just beyond our sensor range."
"One enemy at a time," Kethvos replied. "All ships prepare to fire on my command."
The Grand Fleet tensed for battle. The moment stretched. Then the Prometheus moved. Not toward them, not away. It moved, sideways, in a direction that didn't exist, through a dimension that Dominion physics said was impossible. One moment it was there, a solid target locked in their sights. The next it was everywhere, or nowhere, a flickering ghost that appeared simultaneously in 100 different locations, as if reality itself had become uncertain about where it was supposed to be.
"Fire!" Kethvos screamed. 1,200 ships opened fire at once. The void filled with energy, plasma bolts, kinetic rounds, antimatter warheads, gravitic pulses. Every weapon in the Dominion's arsenal unleashed in a single devastating volley. Every shot missed. The Prometheus slid through the barrage like water through a net, its impossible movements carrying it between the weapons fire as if it existed in a different state of reality. Then it was through, and it was behind them, and their weapons were pointing in the wrong direction, and then the fleet's weapons went dead. Not destroyed, not damaged, simply off. Every weapon on every ship in the Grand Fleet ceased to function simultaneously, as if a switch had been thrown somewhere in the depths of reality itself. "All ships, report," Kethvos demanded.
The reports flooded in, each one the same. Weapons offline, unknown malfunction, unable to restore function. And then, finally, a transmission from the Prometheus.
Captain Elena Vasquez's face appeared on every screen in the fleet. She looked calm, almost regretful.
"High Admiral Kethvos," she said, "you were warned. You were given the opportunity to withdraw with your honor intact. Instead, you chose to attack. You chose to demonstrate the very nature of the Dominion. Aggression first, always, without thought or consideration."
"We did not fire first," Kethvos protested.
"No. You merely pointed 1,200 weapons at a single vessel and prepared to destroy it without provocation. That is who you are. That is what the Dominion is. And that is why this confrontation was inevitable."
"What have you done to our weapons?"
"We've disabled them. Temporarily. They will begin functioning again in approximately 6 hours. Enough time for you to consider your position and make more rational decisions. We have no desire to destroy your fleet, Admiral. As I said in my initial message, we are not here to conquer. We are here to offer an alternative."
"You speak of alternatives while you leave us defenseless."
You are not defenseless. You have 1,200 ships, millions of crew members, and engines capable of returning you to Dominion space. Your only loss is your ability to inflict violence, and even that is temporary. Consider what that means, Admiral. Consider what it says about your civilization that being unable to attack feels like being helpless. The transmission ended.
Kethvos stood on his command deck, surrounded by officers who looked to him for guidance, for orders, for some way to salvage the situation. But he had nothing to give them. The Grand Fleet, the most powerful military force in the known galaxy, had been rendered impotent by a single vessel, without a single casualty on either side.
And the humans had let them live. That, perhaps, was the most terrifying thing of all.